Okay, let's begin. Good morning and welcome to today's digital welcome session for our new national portfolio. My name is Darren Henley and I'm the Chief Executive of the Arts Council. Today, I'll be joined by some of our colleagues here at the Arts Council, Michelle Dixon, who is our Strategy Director based in our Leeds office, Peter Heslip, our National Director of Visual Arts and the Director responsible for our team based in the South East in our Brighton office, and Alex Middleton, who's the Senior Manager in our Funded Organisations team. We're also joined today by our BSL interpreters, Rosie and Melanie, and live captions are provided for you by Joanne and Maria. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. We know how busy you are, and we really do appreciate you spending your Monday morning with us. Some of you we've worked with for many years, and some of you represent organisations we've joined the portfolio for the very first time. But absolutely everybody is equally very welcome here. I'd like to start by saying congratulations once again. You've made it through what was a really competitive process. And we really do appreciate all of the hard work that's gone into getting you here today. Now, before we get going, some quick housekeeping. We'll be in this main space together for most of the session, where our BSL interpreters are pinned to your screens. And if you require captions, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen to see the live captions. We ask that you keep your cameras and microphones off while we're all in this main space together. But when we go into breakout rooms, we invite you to turn them on if you'd like to do so. We are recording this session today, so if your camera is on in the main space, please do bear in mind it will be on the recording. We won't be recording the breakout sessions. You can use the chat function in your breakout rooms, but again, we ask that you avoid using it while we're in this main room together, unless you have any urgent access issues. We'll be using an online platform called Menti to gather and respond to your questions later on. Now, we really do want you to feel comfortable and able to relax today, and we want to have as much interaction with you as we possibly can. You can come and go as much as you please. You won't miss anything, as we will be making a recording of this session, and that'll be available for you by the end of May. We'll be having a break in the middle of the session, so you can have a bit of a breather and go and grab a coffee or a tea. And we expect to be finished in 2 hours by 12 o'clock. So, this is an overview of what we're going to cover today. In a moment, we'll give you a first icebreaker question for you to answer in breakout rooms. Other information we're going to cover today includes an overview of our national portfolio for 2023 to 2026. We want to spend some time discussing how we're going to work together, both what the Arts Council will do and what our expectations of you are as well. And at this point, we'll take your questions too. We'll then go through some of the support we have available to you, and we'll focus on our new Transforming Governance programme as part of that. And crucially, we'll also get your feedback on what you'd like to see from it. I really do hope that you find this session useful, while also getting to know each other and us a little bit more. Before we get started, we wanted to play this film to remind us all why we're here today. It's always exciting at the beginning of a new journey. But we also know that for the last 3 years, it's been a really difficult time for us all, both personally and as a sector. We know that you all still face a really tough operating climate. The pandemic might officially be over, but we're still feeling the effects as we continue to understand the changes in audience and visitor behaviour. And we know it's a tough economic climate as well. It's understandable that these last few years evoke different feelings. And while we're keen to reset and look forward with optimism, we also acknowledge that you may also be feeling a degree of trepidation as well. At the Arts Council, we want to offer pragmatic and practical ways to work together. So, with that in mind, we'd like you to do a short exercise in breakout rooms and offer you the opportunity to share your personal reflections. Take a moment to introduce yourselves and to talk about your ambitions for the next 3 years. We'd like you to highlight a project that you are particularly excited about and how it will help to deliver Let's Create. In your breakout rooms, we encourage you to switch on your camera and your microphone if you're comfortable doing so. If you require captions, you can turn on automated captions. If you require BSL interpretation, a BSL interpreter will be in the room with you and you can pin them to your screen. You can also use the chat box in there. If you encounter any issues or you leave the breakout room by accident, just rejoin the Zoom call on the link that we emailed to you at the start, and we'll be there in the lobby and we can support you. And a reminder, the breakout rooms are not being recorded. We're going to give you around 10 minutes to do this now. Bear with us for just a moment while we all get sent to our rooms. Thank you for taking the time to do that, and we hope it's given you an insight into the aspirations and challenges around you. I wanted to share some information about the national portfolio in numbers. There are 985 of you, which is our biggest portfolio to date. And within that, you'll see we have 275 newcomers and 40 investment principles support organisations, or IPSOs for short. These IPSOs are there to help other NPOs and organisations and individuals across the rest of the sector to embed our investment principles in their work. 24 organisations are also part of our transfer programme. That's 18 NPOs and 6 IPSOs. And they're organisations that are committed to moving outside of London by the 3rd year of this portfolio. Finally, and although these organisations didn't have to apply for investments at the same time as you, our national portfolio includes some other types of regularly funded organisations. Creative People and Places Consortia, who develop creative opportunities by, for, and with local communities with historically lower levels of cultural engagement. And there are currently 39 CPPs across the country. We also have 9 museums development providers, and we have 117 music hubs across the country who collectively ensure music education provision for every child in every school. Now, I spend a lot of my time traveling around the country every single week, meeting as many members of the public and creative people and cultural organisations as I possibly can. And I see so many examples of the life-changing work different organisations deliver day in, day out. And it's easy to see numbers on a slide like this and not think much of it. But I hope that you can join me in seeing the huge potential and the exciting possibilities that collectively this portfolio represents. I'm now going to hand you over to Peter to take you through the next part of our presentation. Peter. We'll keep going from here. So, over the next 3 years, more than 60% of our investment will go into supporting our NPOs and IPSOs. And we expect executives and chairs to take the lead in helping us to deliver Let's Create. We want to encourage you to work with each other and support the rest of our sector. We look to you to share resources and to partner with others. And this might include making co-productions, doing joint R&D, sharing your data, or holding joint staff training. We look to you to support individual artists and organisations outside the portfolio. And that could be via giving advice, support, and sharing resources wherever possible. We also hope you'll build closer partnerships in other sectors. That includes higher and further education, health, and the commercial creative industries. We're looking to you as the leaders of our national portfolio to set the pace and to build these relationships. We also expect you to show best practice by using the investment principles, and Michelle will be talking about that in more detail later in the session, so long as her microphone works. So,
Darren, can I check?
Peter,
can you hear me now?
We can. Over to you.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm not quite sure what happened there. It's great to be here with so many colleagues from around the country. Right. Well, Darren, you've handed over to me just in time for the really exciting part of the presentation before, but incredibly important. So this is about the monitoring relationship. Some of you might be familiar with this already. Maybe some of you less so if you're new to the portfolio. But it's really important that we all find ourselves on the same page after the next few slides. So please bear with me. So for this funding period, we are changing the way that we interact with the portfolio. We are planning to take a lighter touch approach to monitoring your funding relationships. And we expect your board to be taking a more central role to ensure that our funding agreement is being delivered. By doing that, our staff will have more time to support organizations and artists who don't already have a funding relationship with us, and also to help our team work in place, work in communities that also don't have high levels of investment with the Arts Council. You can read more detail about that in a document called the Relationship Framework. And in that, you can read about how we'll work together. It's been emailed to you, and it's also available on our website. The framework, which is in that document, sets out the baseline level of contact. And the following activities are what makes up that, which are the bullets on the slide. So first of all, the majority of our monitoring will be done by reading the quarterly board papers you send us. Also, you'll be asked to make annual reports to the Arts Council, which talks about your activity plan, your investment principles plans, and also some budgets. Secondly, we will plan to meet with you for an annual progress meeting, usually in the first quarter of the year. Our first one of these meetings will be between April and June next year, 2024. And that meeting will be a chance to talk about the progress that you've made against your plans for the previous year. We'll also use that meeting to talk about the forthcoming year and talk about any risks that we've flagged and answer any of your questions or concerns that you've got. Third and finally, our team of relationship managers and senior relationship managers will be seeing a representative sample of your organization's work. That tells us about your progress and will inform the annual review meeting. So those 3 points is what we call the baseline monitoring for everybody. And if we consider you to be a low risk organization, we will not generally attend board meetings, and we won't have other progress meetings or phone calls with you during the year. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about instances where you might be hearing more from us. So organizations that are new to the portfolio and finding your feet should expect to hear more from us during this first year, because we want to help you familiarize yourself with our processes. Our staff are likely to attend one of your board meetings as well. So that's our welcome year, really. But in addition, our monitoring can increase if we think your organization is at a higher risk, and there are lots of reasons why the risk might increase. And that might mean that our staff are coming to your board meetings, or we might ask for a special meeting with your chair and your chief executive. But I'm going to park that conversation about risk for now and come back to that in a little bit. Let me just touch on a few other types of contact that you might expect to have from us. So you might have an introductory meeting if you recruit a new chair, or if you employ a new senior executive, or also if there's a change on our side, say your relationship manager were to change and we were to be giving you a new person to meet. We might also ask to be involved as an observer during any recruitment, such as your chair or any of your senior executives. And finally, you might expect to hear from us when we are gathering sector intelligence. So we could be asking for examples of best practice and innovation, and we might be looking out for gaps in provision. or maybe we want to talk about other activity in your local area. And for this, it might be your relationship manager getting in touch with you, but it might also be another member of our team. So in the next slide, we're talking about the role of boards. And when I'm talking about boards right now, we're also talking about other oversight groups. We understand there's lots of different organizations with different governance arrangements in the portfolio. But you'll know that from the application process that you wrote and the guidance that you've had, that all of our funded organizations need to have a board. That board needs to meet formally at least 4 times a year as well. And while MPO executives have responsibility for day-to-day delivery of the funding agreement, we look to your board to take responsibility for overseeing that funding agreement. It's really the board's role to keep in track of progress in terms of the funding agreement, and we look to the board to hold the executive team to account where needed. We'll be using your board papers really importantly to check on the progress that you're making on your targets and your success measures. And those papers really help us to gauge how active your board is in its role monitoring progress. Now, we recognize that every organization is different in type and scale, and that you will have your own approach, but it's critical that you provide us what we need. Your board papers should be sent to us every quarter of the year, but in saying that, we're not asking you to align your board's scheduled meetings with our payment schedule. So if I could just give an example, you might submit papers to us for your July MPO payment, but you might include papers for a meeting that took place earlier in the year, say sometime after April up until June. We do expect board meetings to happen at least quarterly though, so we wouldn't really expect you to send the same board papers more than once, say for 2 payment requests in a row. So here we've set out what we expect your board papers to have in them in terms of our relationship framework. So as a minimum, as listed here, that should include an agenda for the board meeting. Our team will be looking at minutes for the previous board meeting as well. And those really need to have enough detail for us to be able to establish what your board was talking about. We expect to see evidence that the board is tracking progress, delivering the funding agreement, and also some evidence of risk management. We'd also like to see up-to-date financial information, and that should include the most recent management accounts. And those accounts, just to set that out, as it is in the document that you have, should have your original budget for the year, the actual results to the period to date, any variance and difference between the two, and any revised projections to the end of the year as well. We'd also like to see a rolling cash flow forecast that includes opening balances and a forecast to the end of the year and some financial statements. And we appreciate that some organizations, say if you're a library with a local authority, you might have a slightly different set of reporting. So it is worth checking in with your relationship manager about what exactly might best satisfy our reporting requirements to really make sure that we're getting the best possible information about your financial progress. But we've worked with the libraries some time, so we do know about that. We also expect to see updated risk register for the organizations and your financial statements. And I think finally, we would expect to see quarterly progress reports. And in those reports, that's where we'll be looking for targets and success measures that we had already agreed in your funding agreement. So for example, you telling your board what you said you would do in terms of your activity plan and your investment principle plan, and also highlighting areas where not enough progress is being made, and maybe plans and actions to improve performance where things aren't quite going to plan. Hopefully it will help you that we've produced templates for you to use for all of those submissions. You need to ensure that your board meetings work for you. We understand that in many cases, we are only one source of income for organizations. You might have other funders that you're reporting to, so it's still crucial that you provide us with what we need to meet our reporting requirements. Great. Rosie, is my speed okay? Yep. Okay. Okay, thank you. So next, let me touch on risk. So as you know, we distribute government money, and we are required by the government to ensure that money publicly invested in the portfolio is being used and managed effectively. And to demonstrate that, we rely on our team to write risk ratings for each MPO and IPSO every single quarter of the year. And as I just said in the previous slide, our team will use evidence from your board papers to inform those risk ratings. So we look across a number of different areas when we write those risk ratings, as set out in this bullet list here. When we talk about activity, that's in terms of our funded activity, so your progress against the targets and the success measures that we agreed in your funding agreement. When we talk about investment principles, again, that's to do with the targets agreed in your funding agreement. When we look at the risk around management and governance, that's really us understanding how effectively your executive team and your board are leading and managing the company. Financial viability is the financial health of the organization and issues arising there. And finally, and very importantly, reputational risk is something which is about issues that might be controversial and maybe have the potential to attract negative coverage for your company, say in mainstream media, social media. And to be very clear about that, it's not risk monitoring for us, which is about policing the sector. We absolutely support our funded organizations to take artistic risks, and we believe in freedom of speech. And we understand that sometimes the risk taking that you do does generate controversy, but we need to keep track of how organization staff and independent artists are supported when those issues arise. So those are the 5 areas in which we track risk, and our team will be writing up a risk summary assessment and a rating, and those will be sent to you on a quarterly basis using our software Grantium. So it's really important that you send us the information that we need on time so that we can keep our monitoring up to date. And we also expect that our risk reports that we write will be shared with your board. So the next slide is about intervention. So if your risk rating starts to increase, we will think about taking a range of different interventions to help mitigate and hopefully help you reduce that risk as well. We recognize that these are extremely challenging economic times for everybody. There's steeply rising costs, continuing audience uncertainty after the pandemic, and the Arts Council understands that you might need to adjust your plans to respond to these challenges. We'll be understanding of this, and we'll try to be as flexible as possible in responding to your request to make any changes to your activity plans, to your investment principle plans, after the funding agreement has been signed. If we are concerned about the risk to our investment, or we believe that the terms and conditions of the funding agreement have been breached, we might take one of the following measures listed here. So we might place extra conditions on our grant payments, asking you to send us additional material before we release our funds. And if we don't receive or agree on some plans to deal with the issues arising, we might also make your organization ineligible for other Arts Council funding programs, such as National Lottery project grants or a capital funding program and others. Also, if your board or oversight group papers don't meet our requirements, for example, we would raise that in our risk monitoring and start by attending board meetings. Or maybe we might signpost your team to support through our new governance program. And if that doesn't address the issue, a senior member of our Arts Council staff might ask to meet with your chair and your chief executive to talk about your actions. And ultimately, though, we might withhold payments. Please have a look in the relationship framework document for other specific actions we'll take. And that's also where we talk about the time frame in which we take those actions. So I'm going to end this slide by saying a little bit more about our approach to what we call financial intervention. In short, we will not regrettably be able to directly financially intervene in any MPOs or IPSOs. That means we will not offer additional funding to support your organization's liquidity. The Arts Council simply doesn't have the budget for this. And that means that you would not be able to request additional funding to meet activity or operational costs which are covered in your funding agreement, or for us to give you money to support you with any other financial difficulties. We will, however, consider requests from organizations to use their grant differently for a set period of time. For organizations in financial and other difficulty, that might enable you to review or stabilize your business if you needed it. We would also consider requests for what we call reprofiling, which means changing the schedule of payments within a funding year. And we might also consider grant advance, which means we would give you an advance payments across different funding years as well to help you with your cash flow. In very exceptional circumstances, the Arts Council might provide indirect financial support through commissioning an independent consultant to do a review of your organization's business. The consultancy is always focused on risk to our investment, but it can provide support to the organization in terms of analysis of the situation, maybe giving options for ways of moving forward. We always tell the consultant doing that sort of work that additional investment from the Arts Council is not in scope of their work. So that's it on risk, which means I'm now going to hand you over to Michelle Dixon.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you from sunny Yorkshire. So we're going to take some time to hear from you via Menti. So this is a platform that we'll use to cover your questions. So on your computer or a smartphone, if you could type in www.menti.com if you have a question that you want to ask, and the code is on the screen here, 39478005. And if you type in a question, it will appear on the screen here, so everyone will be able to see it. We have over 200 of you with us this morning, which is fantastic, but might make my task as a question master a little tricky, but we'll see how we go. So we'll wait a moment and see if we've got some questions coming through. I know we've had some on the chat as well, so we can pick some of those up as well, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. Okay, let's start to pick some of these up and some of the ones in the chat as well. Alex, who's a colleague from our funded organisations team. Alex, do you want to answer the question about whether the templates are compulsory or optional?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. So we have published templates that you can use for your board reporting throughout the year. They are optional to use. We do need you to use the templates once a year when you report directly to us every April, so we can see your activity for the ensuing year in a format that's consistent and reportable. But during the year, whilst we're encouraging you to use the templates, it's up to you really to find a format that works for your organisation and for your board.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. And there was a question about submitting board papers. So they get submitted by Grantium. Do people also need to send them to their relationship manager as well?
Yeah, so they do need to be submitted on Grantium every quarter, because that is, as Peter was outlining, that is the main way in which we're now monitoring your funding agreement and your delivery. But we do ask as well that you add your relationship manager to the distribution list for your board papers. So depending on when your board meeting falls, it might be quite a while in advance of the quarterly payment request, for example. So if you could add your RM, that would be really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. And various questions and comments about monitoring and how light touch is this really? And I think for low risk organisations, it certainly is lighter than in previous rounds, and you will have less direct contact and engagement with your relationship manager. So we are putting a lot of emphasis on the board papers and being able to keep an eye on those to ensure progress. And Peter outlined where we will step up that monitoring, and that's related to risk. So rather than scale it according to the size of your organisation, or the level of funding that we're making to you, it is scaled in terms of risk. Alex, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think about the points around proportionality. I mean, we've set out the kind of basic expectations around board papers, which are fairly basic in terms of agenda, minutes, things like that. And you know, we do expect that board papers will look wildly different. So if you're a very, very big organisation with lots of strands of activity, lots of departments, of course your board papers will be a lot more complex than board papers of a smaller organisation. So I think we're not trying to be too prescriptive around the board papers. The thing that we really do need to see is that you're reporting on the funded activity, so the activity that we originally agreed to see in your funding agreement. But of course, your board papers are going to need to function for many other purposes and stakeholders as well, and we completely acknowledge that.
And we're not expecting everyone to report on everything in every set of board papers either, are we? So, you know, you might have lots of activities in relation to your progress against the investment principles and so on. We're not expecting every set of board papers to be a full account of your progress in each of those activities. So it's got to be relevant, and I think that's what we mean by saying these are your board papers and they have to work for your organisation whilst giving us enough insight and understanding as to how you're progressing against the plans that you applied against in your application. We're going to talk in the second half of this session about boards and the support and what you might need in terms of support for your boards, and also the investment principles and some of the tools and resources we have in place to offer you there. So we'll pick up some of those in that part of the session. There's a point about reasonable adjustment and access. Alex, do you want to pick that up about the access provision we can make?
Yeah, so we have said, as with the application process, where there are any specific access needs where we might need to make reasonable adjustments, we will talk to organisations about that. So that covers the kind of monitoring relationship as well. And obviously these kind of things are, you know, very specific organisation by organisation. So do talk to your relationship manager. Your relationship manager will then have conversations with our teams internally about what we might be able to do. And I know we're certainly already talking to a few organisations about changes that we might need to make to accommodate.
Great, thank you. Did any colleagues pick up on any other questions that they wanted to answer now.
I think we're getting some feedback on the fact that the templates are used using Excel, and that can be a barrier, an access issue sometimes. So just to note that we are, I know at the moment we're working across a couple of different platforms. We've got Quantium, we've got other platforms. We are using Excel, but do continue to provide feedback. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're not making the Excel templates mandatory throughout the year, because we know that they don't work for everyone. So do continue providing feedback. We obviously want to make them as user-friendly as possible.
Thanks, Alex. There's a question there I can see about headline details on a strategic funding. So we'll be publishing a refresh of our current delivery plan that will cover the third and final year of the delivery plan 23-24 in a couple of weeks' time. So that will set out the programmes that are available across the year and have further information there. So we'll let you know when that's updated and you can have a look at that. So Illuminate, Impact and Insight Toolkit, etc. I'll cover in the second half of the meeting. I've seen a couple of comments about more human contact and less paperwork. I think we've been consistent in our messaging that we have limited capacity and want to spend more of our staff time with a wider range of organisations and individuals. And you will still have a relationship manager, you'll still be able to speak to somebody if you need to, but we are consciously, intentionally trying to make that shift so that we can free up more of their capacity in that way. Okay, I think we've picked up most of these themes that I've spotted. If there is anything that you are desperate to know that we haven't covered now, do ask your RM if you need to, and we'll have a quick scroll back through the break and make sure we've covered or are about to cover most of what we can here. So thank you for those. So we're going to take a break now. I'm going to be very strict and precise. We're going to have a 15-minute break. So if we can come back just before 11:15, we will start promptly at 11:15 so that we can make the most of the time that we have together. So hope you have time for a bit of fresh air, a cuppa, and we'll see you at 11:15. Thank you. So we will publish some FAQs to go with this recording, and also from the sessions we did in person as well. So bear with us, and we will work our way through those questions. And there are lots of questions and suggestions in the chat. We're going to give you a chance to collaborate with each other in just a moment. Please do try and just use that chat for essential stuff, because it's quite distracting, I think, to have multiple conversations going on at the same time now. So let's put you in breakout spaces again, and we'll do that for 15 minutes. We'll give you a few more minutes than last time, and we'll try and give you a bit more warning when the time is running out. But collaboration is obviously hugely important, and it's at the heart of Let's Create, I think. So thinking about what we've already shared and discussed, please do try and use the time to introduce yourself very briefly and think about how you might collaborate with the wider sector and potentially with each other as well. If you are comfortable to, please switch on your camera and your mic. If you need captions, you can turn on automated captions. And if you require an interpreter, BSL interpreter, they'll be with you in the room and you can pin them to your screen and you can use the chat box in that room. We won't record those breakout rooms. If you need anything or you drop out, you can jump back in via the joining link and we'll be here to help. So we'd like you to talk through, as I say, who you are and your plans and ideas for collaboration over 15 minutes. Okay, thank you. So welcome back, everyone. We'll keep moving and we'll focus on our investment principles now. Our 4 investment principles are the characteristics of what a well-run modern cultural organisation looks like. As we develop our approach to future investment in the portfolio, we're likely to focus increasingly on how well applicants for funding have embedded these investment principles. We think boards have a key role in encouraging the executive to embed the principles, and we see it as a process of continuous improvement. Everybody is somewhere on the spectrum for each of the investment principles, and we want boards and executives to work together, learning from best practice and setting increasingly ambitious targets for improvement for your company. We recognise that for many of you, these investment principles are already part of your day-to-day business, and indeed the investment principles came from consultation with the sector as part of the development of Let's Create. However, other organisations might want more support and help with embedding them, and so we've developed a range of resources to help you all. These are set out on the next few slides. None of these tools are mandatory, apart from using the Illuminate platform to share audience data with us on a regular basis. This helps us to analyse what's happening with audiences across the portfolio, as well as supporting us to make the case to government for the impact of our investment. So, our investment principle support organisations, IPSOs, will focus on those investment principles where they have expertise and experience in supporting others to adopt them. They'll help us to support the sector, not just NPOs, but other organisations and individuals to really get to grips with the investment principles. Soon there'll be a database on our investment principles resource hub where you can browse the IPSOs and see what they've got on offer and what use it might be for you. If you're not familiar with the Investment Principles Resource Hub, or if you haven't looked at it since you made your application to be an NPO or an IPSO, please do have another look. It's got a wealth of information about the investment principles and how you can embed them into your organisation and activity. It's regularly updated with new content, and there are essential reads, case studies, toolkits, videos, podcasts, and more. All NPOs and IPSOs are required to submit data about their funded activity and audiences. This will include where events are happening and the total audience numbers. Most NPOs and IPSOs will be required to collect survey data from a representative sample of their audiences and submit the data, and upload ticketing data where you're able to. But some of you may be exempt from these 2 requirements. If you are exempt, you'll have been informed by your relationship manager already. For the most part, you're required to provide audience data reporting on a quarterly basis, and this must be kept up to date throughout the funding period. So what's Illuminate and what else can it do? It's an audience insights platform that's owned by the Arts Council and built and managed by PwC. It uses survey and box office data to provide you with analysis to support your audience development and improve the dynamism of your organisation. It will help you understand if what you're creating, producing, or promoting is relevant for your customer base or your local community, and support you to deepen that reach. As a leadership team, you'll have audience data at your fingertips to make informed, data-driven decisions. There will also be a training area where you can access guidance and other training materials. NPOs and IPSOs are also required to complete the annual data survey as a condition of your regular funding. Over the coming months, we'll be sharing more information with you about how the annual survey will change as we move into the new funding period. PwC have already held some sessions introducing Illuminate to users. We have FAQs on our website that we're updating as the tool develops, and we'll keep sharing those with you through our regular emails. So keep an eye out for that. There'll be more introductory sessions and more information available to you online as the Illuminate platform develops and launches at the start of June. So we'll keep in touch about those too. So we wanted to give you a rundown of some of the other tools that are available to you. So firstly, the Impact and Insight Toolkit. So this could help you measure progress against the ambition and quality investment principle. It's a free evaluation and survey tool, which enables you to gather and analyse feedback about your work. So you can set your intentions for a piece of work and then seek responses from people who experience or interact with it, including staff, peers, members of the public. So do have a look at that if you haven't already. Our environmental responsibility programme is delivered by Julie's Bicycle. It's designed to support the portfolio and the wider sector to improve their environmental responsibility and take action to respond to the climate crisis. Julie's Bicycle have lots of plans to support you. This includes an environmental champions programme for board members and an organisational and place-focused resilience programme. Other programme strands include an energy management programme, Transforming Energy, which is for venue-based organisations, and the Creative Climate Leadership Lab, which is designed to support emerging and underrepresented leaders in the sector. Additional resources, which we'll continue to share with you over the course of the funding period, include more free tools and how you can calculate your own carbon footprint. Our digital culture network is made up of a team of tech champions who are based across England and all have different specialisms. It's funded by the Arts Council, and our champions are there to offer free one-to-one support and expertise to you and others in a range of areas, including digital strategy and marketing, content, e-commerce, analytics, ticketing and CRM, websites, search engine marketing and optimization, and digital accessibility. In addition, there are regular webinars and an online knowledge hub. So please tell colleagues within your organisation about the Digital Culture Network if they don't already know about it. The team are really responsive too, so if you have a gap, if you have a need, let them know and they'll do what they can to help you. We now want to take a few minutes to introduce you to a new initiative we're developing at the moment, Transforming Governance. You'll be glad to know this isn't a funding programme. You don't have to apply for it. It's an offer of support from us to you on all things governance. This programme will support chairs, trustees and executive leaderships to understand roles and responsibilities, including in relation to Arts Council funding, to better manage and monitor organisational risk, and diversify governance through inclusive recruitment, change, succession planning, and to embed the investment principles. So over the next 3 years, we want to support you all to further diversify your leadership and governing bodies to be more representative of the communities you serve, particularly in relation to disability. The Transforming Governance programme will provide practical advice and support to help boards diversify. There'll be 4 strands: free resources, toolkits and inspiration available on our Investment Principles Resource Hub. Support for the portfolio, beginning with these welcome sessions, but also online workshops and peer-to-peer chair networks. A focus on the future, exploring new and alternative models of governance, independent advice, mentoring and training for potential future portfolio applicants. And finally, specialist advice, so tailored action plans for organisations seeking or needing additional support. The wider programme will be promoted over the summer and being delivered from September this year through to March 2025. So with all that in mind, and as we develop Transforming Governance, we wanted to take a moment to ask you, what do you need from us? So we're going to move to Menti again. So if you type menti.com, add the code in, and then we'll ask you 2 questions. The first question is, how best can we provide you with governance support over this period? And we've got a mixture of chairs and board members here and staff. So please do start your answer with board or leadership, just so we know who you're talking about. So feel free to submit your thoughts and ideas here. Thank you. We're having a Menti moment. There we go. Brilliant. Thank you. So would you find a network for chairs helpful? Obviously keen to hear from chairs or other board members here, but feel free to think, if you're a member of staff, whether your chair might find it helpful. If you would find it helpful, do you have any preferences about how it might be set up, in person or online, by your art form or discipline, or by place, and facilitated or self-organised? So think about those things, as well as a yes or no, but a yes or no is fine. Great. So lots of responses here. I think mostly supportive, but spanning very different ways of setting it up, which I think reveals some of the challenge. Yeah, rotating chairs, that's fine. It doesn't have to be the same person. We'll take this away. I'm not sure we're going to, from looking at these responses anyway, I'm not sure we're going to come up with a solution that works perfectly for everybody, but we will see what we've got and what we heard in the other sessions as well, and see what we can do. Thanks so much, everybody, for this input. So I'll just leave this question open for another minute in case people are still responding. Great. I will hand back to Darren, who's going to bring us to the end of today's session.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you for all of that input, really, really helpful. So as Michelle says, we've nearly got to the end of today's session. Before we close, I just wanted to take some time to talk to you about the importance of making the case for the public investment that you're in receipt of, whether that's coming from the government or from the National Lottery. The message that investing in creativity and culture makes amazing things happen across the country needs to be shared all the time, and we need your help in doing that. And the reason this is so important is because the more that the public and other audiences make the connection, the more that translates into a better case that we can make for more investment in creativity and culture moving forward. And that's important for the case we constantly make to national government, and it's also important when we're making the case to local government as well. So I want to take this opportunity to emphasise the importance of not only using the correct logos and branding your work properly, but also making sure you're talking about this investment in other places as well. We've got an updated toolkit on our website where you can find lots of different resources to help you acknowledge our investment. For example, we have a section all about engaging your local MP. And if that's not something you've tried before, we really recommend inviting them to see your work or to visit your venue. And there are different ideas in the toolkit so they can match organisations of different sizes and scopes. You can also tell us more about your work, and you'll find contact information for your local area communication teams, and they're also there to help you tell your story. We're going to send a post-event survey to you by email very soon. It will be really great if you were able to take a few minutes to complete it. We're very keen to know how today went and how we can improve it for you for next time. In the coming weeks, we'll be in touch again, linking to all the resources that we've talked about today. And finally, we've recorded this session today, and we'll make that recording available online shortly and share that with you too. And we'll also come back to you and answer some of those questions you asked in the first half that we didn't have time to cover in detail, so you can make sure that there's nothing that we're not answering there. Once again, I want to thank you very much for coming along today. We really do appreciate you spending time with us this morning. It's great to have you with us. I hope that you are as excited as we are to be going on this journey together. Thank you again. Have a very happy Monday. And let's end with this short film. Let's create.
Let's create a country united by culture to be happier, healthier, excited, inspired, to make sense of our world, sense of ourselves, comforting the lonely, helping kids become grown-ups and grown-ups become kids again. Bringing us all together with the freedom to ask difficult questions and take a stand, to make your mark and make a difference, where your age, your colour and your bank balance don't matter, where it's about who you are, not where you're from, about what you do, not what you can't, for the change the worlders and the just for funners, the kids with ambition and the ambitious with kids, in villages, towns and cities, in playgrounds and packed concert halls, in rooms above pubs and festivals in fields, playing to crowds of thousands and audiences of one. Now, let's create.